Hello, this video is going to be a bit of a recap, just going over a few things that I hope you've managed to work out, and if you haven't managed to work them out then it should help you to be able to do so. So I'm going to go over these 6 things: navigating in your windows, your display options, the idea of working from a line, then a surface to a solid, your snaps, adding and subtracting objects, and then filleting objects, which is creating corners. So I thought I'd use a model I drew a little while ago, and so the reason I'm going to use this is because it shows you why you want to set Rhino up in the view styles that you want. Okay, so at the moment we've got the top view here, front view here, right view over here, and the perspective view up in this one. When you're working on something like this kind of looks a bit clunky. It doesn't kind of read right, like the top view doesn't line up with the front view or the right view. So if I was going to use this as my layout, I would change this bottom left view to be the side view, and then I could put my front view or my back view over here. So Rhino lets you change these viewports as much as you want. So you can right click on here and you can go set view and you can change the view to these default views here. So if I make this the left hand side, so now this view and this view kind of line up, which to me in my head makes more sense when I'm looking at the drawing. I can I can either change this to be a front view if I wanted to see the end of this. For this particular model that I'm working on, this front view isn't that helpful at the moment, so I could actually close this view off. Can I close this view off? Wow. I can make that view a lot smaller because I don't need to use that as much. I can shift these however I want, so quite often you're working in perspective, so you can make this one bigger and smaller by double clicking it. On Windows and Mac it's slightly different, but you can click these bars, which are somewhere on the top of your Windows thing as well, or you can click this to take you back to here. If it all goes pear-shaped, you've got a view tab. You probably can't quite see that up there, but view, and then you can go to viewport layout and you can hit 4 viewports and it will take you back to where it defaulted. So if you've done all kinds of crazy things with your Windows and you need to get it back, you can go viewport layout, 4 viewports. So set view left, and I'm going to do that with that one in the moment. Okay, once you're in your viewport, you can see at the moment I can see right through this boat, which means there's an awful lot of surfaces on this boat, which means that Rhino can spin it quite fast. It's not using a lot of the computer's memory in order to be able to shift this view around. If I want to see it in 3 dimension, in a shaded kind of view, I would have to choose one of these. Shaded gives the surfaces that you've got some color. These are color coded to the different heights of the thing, which is why they're all crazy colors. Rendered applies the materials that you've put on. Now if I try and spin this round, you can see it bounces around a lot slower because Rhino's having to do a lot more work to render or to color those surfaces in as we move it around. So generally you don't leave it on rendered on larger models, you can get away with it on smaller models. Ghosted allows you to see through, so you can see here, you can see some steps going through the boat. X-ray is just a complete wireframe, allows you to see right through things. Technical, maybe it'll do it, maybe it won't. Oh no, please don't crash. Okay, technical is another way of looking at it that looks a little bit more like a drawing. I'm scared to hit artistic because it's probably going to give up, but we'll try, see what it looks like. So you've got kind of like a sketchy rendering kind of look. and you'll get a nice kind of like a line pen drawing if you switch it to pen, which is really good if you're going to then print it out and then shade it in by hand afterwards. Kind of the most common one that I would use is to leave it on shaded though. Okay, so that's moving around in here. In terms of navigating these once you're inside them, it's so much easier with a mouse. So if you right click, you can pan, you can move it around. If you right click in this one, it will spin it around. If you hold down shift in the 3D one, you can move it side to side, which is the same as doing this right click. So shift and right click allows you to move side to side. Having a scroll wheel on your mouse makes it so much easier to zoom in and out. If you're working on a trackpad, on at least my trackpad, 2 fingers allows you to rotate like this. Pinching and moving in and out allows you to zoom. So you still can access it, I just find it a lot easier to move around with a mouse. One of the commonest shortcuts that I will use is, I just write it here, ZAE, not zoom naked, hitting Z first, then hitting A for all, and then either this one or this one. So E takes you out to the edges of the drawing, right? Or say you wanted to focus on something a little bit smaller, so I'll select the helicopter, and then I hit Z A, which is all of my windows, to the selected object. I will zoom all of my windows down to the bits that I have selected. Okay, which is really useful when you're working on small details. So now my 3-dimensional view rotates just around the fin of the helicopter here. Okay, so if you're finding that your 3-dimensional view is not rotating, it seems to be rotating around a weird point, like so if I zoom out here, I'm still rotating around that tail rotor of the thing. If I ZAS, now when I rotate my object, it will rotate centrally around all my things, so no longer around the tail rotor. Okay, so that kind of covers navigating in a window, your display options, so zooming and your display options. The next thing I want to talk about is moving from a line to a surface to a solid. So we'll start a new model here. So if you are trying to create an object, I think the easiest way to think about it if you're doing a complex object is to first draw the lines, turn those lines into a surface, and then turn that surface into a solid. So there's a number of different ways that you can do that, but one of the most common ways, one of the easiest ways, is to extrude things. And extrude basically means to push something along something else. So your line tools, you have a bunch of line tools. So all the way down to here are your line tools. They all do slightly different things. The ones that I will commonly use are these two, and this one for drawing circle shapes. So a line, click the start, click the end, you've got a line. So a line and a polyline is different. A line, start, stop, finish, and that was when I clicked and held and selected line. If I just click once, you'll see it's polyline, so a multiple line. So start, and it will keep going until I press enter. You can still draw one part of your line, but you need to press enter to finish that line. Okay, so that's the difference between line and polyline. Rhino will default to polyline when you click line. Right. Command A, select all, delete. This one here is your curved lines, and so either this one or this one are the ones that you're commonly going to use. So this one, the first one, if I draw a point, you'll see hopefully what I mean. Get rid of this for a second. So if I select the first one and I click the start of my curve, then I click that point there and I click down here, press enter to finish my line. The line is controlled by this point, but it doesn't pass through this point. Whereas the third option, start, click that point, click down here, the line is actually controlled by these 2 points and it passes through that point that I drew. So two slightly different ways of drawing a line. If you are tracing something, you'll probably use this one. If you're just drawing a nice smooth curve, you'll probably use that top one there. Once you have, I'll leave that there. Once you have some lines, you can turn those into surfaces and then solids. The easiest way to turn it into a surface is to extrude your line into a surface. So you have extrude curve or extrude surface. At the moment we have a curve, so we select extrude curve. Okay. It then asks you for the distance that you're going to put, or you can just click to create a surface. Right, once you have created a surface, you can then push that surface by a very similar command, extrude surface instead of extrude curve this time, and it asks you for where you want to extrude it. Now you can see here that at the moment it's going up and down. I actually want to extrude it out this way, so I have to tell Rhino which direction I want to extrude it in. So I click direction, I hold down shift to make it go nice and straight, click twice, and that changes the direction. Okay, so I have created a line, I've created a surface, and then I've created a solid. If you follow those steps, you can create a whole bunch of shapes, and reasonably complex shapes by doing that. The next thing on the list was your snaps. So if we are, if you have not turned your snaps on, which are here on your Mac or down the bottom on your Windows, if you try and draw, so disable all, if I try and draw a line that is at the end of this, I can zoom right in and I click as accurately as I can, and if I keep zooming in on this, you will see that it is not right in the corner, and I can zoom in as far as I want and I will never get it exactly on the corner because Rhino works to very, very fine tolerances. So you need to have some snaps turned on. You can turn all of the snaps on, but it does get a little bit more complex having too many snaps on. So I generally have the first ones on, then when I click it will bounce and it will go to the end, which means no matter how far I zoom in, the end of that line is always going to be exactly on top of the end of the line that I clicked. That's really important because Rhino doesn't like gaps. So if you had, if this was not a solid object and there was a tiny gap that you could not even see in this corner, you would never be able to create that object into a solid because Rhino recognizes that it has a gap, which is problematic. So make sure you've got your snaps on, make sure that when you're clicking it's going to the right place. And if your snap is being difficult, so say you can't quite get in where you want to go, turn off the one that's annoying you temporarily. Right, so I've no longer got near, I'll just get the end. Okay, adding and subtracting. So once you've got shapes, adding more shapes and taking away shapes is the most common way to create a more complex object. So if I draw a simple box on the front of this, I can either add this to this or I can take this away from this. Now in Rhino, if you are working with solids, you have to use the solid editing tools, which are in here. So to add them together is this one. So the ones I want to add, that one and that one. Now I have one object. If I want to take one away from the other one, this one takes one away from the other one. If I want to just get the difference between the two of them, this one, so that was the bit that intersected. And if I want to split this one, but I still want to keep the bit that's underneath, it's the third one. Okay, so just delete that temporarily. So I've split that so it is a different object to the other one. And finally, filleting or creating corners. Okay, so you can create corners in a couple of different ways. Let's move this guy slightly out of the way. Okay, so I could create a corner here, or I can create a corner on the solid object, and they're slightly different things. So the command is fillet. Fillet by itself works with curves, and fillet edge works with solids, and fillet surface, I'm sure you can imagine, works with surfaces. So it works on a radius. I'm not quite sure how big I drew this. Oops. Okay, so you type in fillet, then you tell it how big you want the radius of the corner to be. So in this case 1, click the first one, click the second one, it creates a corner. It will cut this line and this line to the right length, and it will also extend them if they're too short. So if I do it again and I create my fillet a bit smaller, it will extend this line and this line so that they join together. Okay, and if I put 0, it will make a hard corner like that. So that works the same way for fillet a solid, which is called fillet edge. So I can put in an edge fillet like that. If you want to fillet this edge, this top edge, and the side edge, you need to think which order that you're going to do it. So if I do this one first, and then I do this one, it should flow all the way around. So right, so I filleted that edge first and then I filleted that. Rhino is a little bit clever that if you go chain edges, it will work out that it will follow that chain around. It hasn't followed the chain past these corners. If I wanted to fillet it the whole way around, okay, so I've smoothed off all of those edges. Then if I hit chain edge, it will go all the way around and hopefully give me a nice, whoa. The reason why it didn't give me a nice smooth fillet is because this fillet here was 2 and the one that I drew first was 2. So the second one always has to be slightly smaller, otherwise it's too complex for the program to deal with. So I could make the second one 1.9. I think, and it should do it. So you can't do this as 2 and then this is 2 because it will upset it too much. Okay, one more time, 1.9 there, and then one around there, and then you get a nice smooth edged object, which is far more realistic than a sharp edged object. So hopefully that has helped you recap how to navigate a window, how to change your display options, line, surface, solid, snaps, adding and subtracting, and fillet or creating corners. If you've got any questions, send me an email, let me know, and I'll try and help you out. Thanks, see ya.